Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Microsoft Reactor event. Thank you all so much for joining us today in this new Azure series that I have here today. We are launching this new Microsoft Azure series in March, where it's going to be like a three-part series where we actually kind of talk all about the fundamentals of Azure and kind of like basics into how to get into cloud compute, what cloud compute is all about, and kind of also taking you into like a tour of like the different Azure services that you have on Azure. We'll take a look at like the Azure portal that we have, what services and products are there, so you can kind of understand it a bit more. So this kind of Azure series is actually intended for anybody who's looking to getting into learning more about Azure, or like for even kind of learning about like a basic understanding of cloud computing concepts and services and offerings offered by the Microsoft Azure platform. So thank you all so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to be here. And before we get started, please let me know where you are joining us from. We are currently live from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. It is 4 p.m. GST here. So please let us know in the chat box where you are joining us from. I would love to know, since we're kind of in a like hybrid model. So I would love to know where our audience is from. That being said, let's get into it. So before we begin, as we know, this event is part of our Microsoft Reactor Code of Conduct. So obviously, we're all here to learn. So obviously, the chat box is open for you to ask any kind of questions or comments. If you have any, I'll make sure to answer them at the end if we had any questions. And, just make sure to kind of be welcoming and be respectful and be kind and considerate. And obviously, we're all here to learn. So let's make this a smooth and easygoing learning journey for each one of us. So, if you've never been here before and this is your first time watching one of my streams, let me introduce myself to you. So, hi, my name is Adil Shiber, and I'm a regional cloud advocate and data analytics engineer at Microsoft. So, I am part of the cloud advocacy team at Microsoft Reactor Middle East and Africa. And part of what we do as regional cloud advocates is we are kind of very passionate about teaching as well as passing on our knowledge basically in anything related to tech. So my expertise areas, or the kind of tech fields that I love to talk about, lie around data analytics, data science, AI, machine learning, and all that kind of stuff. But I also am very passionate about kind of exploring other new topics and kind of talking about them as well, and having co-hosting with other speakers and having other experts to kind of learn from as well and kind of teach me new things. So that's something I absolutely love to do. I'm very passionate about sharing knowledge and building communities. I'm currently running a new kind of Arab-speaking women in tech initiative that I have as well. Very passionate about women empowerment and women in data and women in AI as well. So that's something that I personally love to do. As mentioned before, I'm based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And that being said, if you would like to kind of connect with me, get to know me on a personal level, if you have any questions or such, the easiest way to connect with me is on my LinkedIn. Here's my LinkedIn handle. It's just like my name, Hadil Shubair, and my Twitter handle is @Shubair3. So that being said, let's actually look, more into what we have on the agenda for today. So today we're kind of going to be talking all about cloud computing. So if you've never been in the cloud compute sector before, or in the tech field before, like this is all kind of so new to you, this is actually your like the episode that you can actually go to. So we're kind of going to go through like these several cloud basic concepts that could help you get started to understand the infrastructure of how it really all begins and how it all starts. And then from there, we will start building up our knowledge and kind of learning more as we go. So we will start by understanding all about cloud computing, why all businesses and organizations are kind of moving into cloud computing and choosing it, and kind of like more the benefits of cloud compute and why we use it more than on premises. Then we kind of will explore the different forms of cloud computing. So we have different forms of cloud computing that we have as services. So we're going to kind of explore these more in depth. Then we will kind of understand, the different cloud deployment models that we have. So we have public, private, and hybrid cloud models. We'll be able to differentiate between these concepts, as well as kind of talk more in depth about each one of them. Lastly, I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the Azure services that you have, or the products that you have on Microsoft Azure, that can help you deploy your solution based on your business needs. So this is kind of what we will be learning by the end of today. So let's actually begin by asking this question. So, what is the cloud? Have you ever asked yourself what the cloud actually is? So, what's the definition? So, we always hear, this concept or this term. You've probably heard it multiple times: cloud compute, cloud services, the cloud, and the cloud is taking over, and cloud tech, and all that stuff. Have you ever actually wondered what the cloud actually means? So, the cloud is basically, just to put it into kind of simple words, the cloud is just like the internet. So basically, it is when all the things we have, you can access remotely over the internet. So when something is kind of in the cloud, that means it is stored and accessed on internet service servers instead of basically on our computer hard drive. So obviously, it kind of, by having it on kind of internet servers, that means it enables us to kind of access the same files and applications and the data that we have from basically any device, whether it was a tablet, a PC, or a mobile phone, to access these files from whatever kind of device that we have. Because the computing and storage kind of takes place on servers itself in a data center, that's why we are able to kind of access those files from whatever device we have, instead of kind of locally having it on a hard drive or on the user device. So if you ever kind of thought of, let's take the scenario, let's say you lost your phone or you broke your phone completely. So if you go into another phone or you go into your tablet and you actually log into your Instagram account, you can still find your old account in place, and you can find all the data there, the conversation history of your chats, your DMs, your photos, your videos, and everything else, search history as well. So that is why what all of that is because of the cloud. It's all connected remotely, and you have access remotely to access Instagram specifically over the internet. So this is kind of where the cloud is all about. So now, why should I move to the cloud? Now, this is something that, all organizations and businesses have been thinking about. It's basically, so as technology, in the workplace has kind of evolved, more and more organizations and businesses have decided to kind of move their physical computing infrastructure to actually the cloud. And this is where we'll kind of take a deep dive into like the possibilities of Microsoft Azure and why cloud compute is so important. Um, with the cloud, you are kind of, the cloud kind of offers like everything you really need, from storage, networking, databases, virtual machines, networking, and so much more. It really offers everything that you have over the internet, where you can remotely access all your files or your databases or storage, basically. So cloud computing kind of prevents opportunities for kind of faster innovation, quick turnaround times, and kind of the ability to scale your operations, or basically what you are doing to meet modern day needs. So this is why kind of organizations really grasp it really quickly as soon as this technology has been out. Now let's actually look at some of the reasons why you should move to the cloud. Now let's go back a bit. So if you go back a few years ago, you could think of all the ways you could interact with devices that you couldn't. So a few years ago, we did not have obviously smart, let's say, household appliances. We did not have smart devices. We did not have speech recognition and face recognition. We did not have computer vision. We did not have, let's say, if we go way, way, way back, we did not have Google search and recommendation systems and all that stuff. All of this kind of plays around these examples all kind of play around our technologies, because they are powered by what the cloud actually is. So right now, since we are living in a data-driven world, in a digital world where technology, we have all these new technologies that are surrounded, all around us, and that are kind of really taking over, like AI, Internet of Things, the cloud compute. Obviously, you have data analytics, and so much more. This actually all plays a role in basically how everything around us is connected to the internet. And this is why we actually move to the cloud, because it's kind of faster, more efficient, and it's very reliable and secure. This is something we're actually going to explore more as we go through the slides. So with the shift to cloud compute, obviously this has actually affected the way businesses and organizations actually work, communicate, and collaborate as well. But it's kind of really a necessity in today's digital world. So, for a fun fact, many kind of 500 Fortune companies, like 80% of them, actually use cloud computing for their organizations and businesses. So that's how much of an impact it's actually taking over to do. Why? Because this actually gives organizations, the ability to actually kind of move rapidly and faster and be able to focus on kind of innovating their businesses, which actually leads them to more and better productivity. So this is also kind of related to kind of also security, where it brings kind of secure and anytime access to mobile or desktop devices, so employees can use the combination of locations and technology that suits the work style of the organization. And this is why employees can collaborate effectively whenever and wherever they are, supported by kind of one single platform where and all the business applications that they need. So this is why it's very kind of important for all, like this is where we kind of need to understand why businesses and organizations are taking that shift from moving from an actual kind of normal like cloud onto the actual cloud solution. So let's kind of now define, into depth what cloud computing actually really is. So with cloud computing, it is basically, in simple terms, you have computing services all over the internet, and this is basically the delivery of those computing services. Those computing services are kind of very versatile. So you have several services such as services, we have storage, analytics, databases, intelligence, analytics, and even networks and softwares. So these kind of the delivery of these services are actually what make cloud computing exist. So cloud computing, since it is obviously this tech that is obviously very widely used, this is businesses and organizations use it for because it's used for faster innovation, flexibility for sources, and can scale economies quickly. And the good thing, and one of the highlights or benefits of using actually cloud computing, which I absolutely love, is you basically it follows like a pay as you go model. So what that means is you typically pay for only the cloud services that you use. So for every click that you click, or every kind of service that you run, this is actually what you are paying for. What this does is it's very kind of cost effective. So it helps you lower your operating costs and run your infrastructure smoothly and more efficiently, as well as help you scale your business as per demand or as per the changes needed. So this is kind of what cloud compute is all about. It is the delivery of those all of those services, from networking, storage, softwares, intelligence databases, services, and servers as well, all of those together over the internet. So why do we use cloud compute? So as I mentioned, they are very cost effective. So they operate on low cost, which help you kind of focus more on the actual production of your solution. It's cloud computing actually enables businesses to actually access and store information from wherever they are, from any device, only by using obviously the internet connection, and it enables organizations and businesses to actually do large scale business at a good service quality as well. So with cloud compute, it's kind of all about storing and accessing data and programs, as I mentioned, over the internet, instead of actually using or kind of focusing on the hard drive of your PC. Now, the thing I love with cloud compute is it's kind of, the internet kind of became the cloud. So in a way, all the data that you're doing, your storage, your work, your applications, everything that you're really doing can be available from any device, which you can connect to the internet from wherever you are in the world. So if you're traveling on a plane and you want to access your emails, you can literally do that. If you are in another country and you forgot your computer, you can access, let's say, Dropbox or Google Drive or Google Photos, for example, from your mobile phone. So this is what I love about cloud compute, and this is basically the good kind of advantage of using it. So one type of cloud services that we are kind of very familiar with would be streaming platforms. So platforms that are all used for streaming, for audios or videos, like Twitch, for example, where the actual media files are stored remotely. And another popular one is, the data storage platforms. And the most popular ones we know are Dropbox, or maybe even Google Drive, OneDrive, Google Photos, and so much more. So these are the most popular cloud service examples that we can see that we are highly used today for cloud computing. So Regardless the kind of service that you have or use, the cloud computing service actually provides users with a series of functions that they can use. So from emails, obviously you can access your emails from any device from anywhere you are in the world. Storage, backup, and data retrieval, as I mentioned. You have data storage platforms like Google Drive, for example, creating and testing actual applications, analyzing your data, audio and video streaming as well, platforms, and delivering software on demand. So these are kind of some types of cloud services that you can actually use with cloud computing. Now, also some examples that we actually see and use every day. Obviously, we all use our emails like Outlook and WhatsApp for messaging, and Skype, or let's say FaceTime or Bottom as well for video connecting with family and friends, and so much more. So these are examples that we use every single day. And how these are related in a way is they all make use of the cloud feature of kind of remote accessibility of the data to help support our data in the cloud infrastructure, which helps us access them through the internet anytime, anywhere. So as I mentioned before with the email kind of example, you can do the same with WhatsApp or like FaceTime or Bottom, and so much more. So these are kind of very popular cloud computing examples that we actually use every day, even though you might not actually realize it. Now, with benefits of with cloud computing, you have like many great benefits and advantages of why organizations and businesses are actually shifting to it. Let's actually look at some of the most popular advantages or benefits of why cloud computing is actually so important, and why it is actually very, of advantage, let's say. The first one is, as I mentioned previously, it is very cost effective. So, as I mentioned before, it's the benefits of cloud computing with are, since it follows a cost effective model, it's all about a pay as you go model. So you basically only pay for the resources that you actually use. Next is kind of the reach. With cloud compute, obviously it's accessible everywhere, and has a global scale. Sorry about that. That means in cloud, you can deliver the right amount of IT resources, for example, more or less, let's say, computing power, or more or less computer storage, right when they're needed, and from the right geographic location as well. When it comes to performance, with cloud computing, it gives great performance because the data center is actually regularly upgraded, and this actually provides for good actual efficient computing hardware and fast computing hardware, so the performance is always up to date as well. Then we can also say that one of the benefits of cloud computing is actually it is secure. So you have, of course, a number of huge loads, vast amounts of services, um, and it helps kind of protect your kind of applications from any kind of threats that you receive as well. So when it comes to kind of potential threats and such, this is very secure. Speed, it is very fast, it's very computing resources that usually take, let's say, hours to be done, or such, actually take only minutes or even just seconds with just a few mouse clicks and such. So this is why one of the best kind of also benefits of cloud computing. When it comes to productivity, this is also one of the big ones as well. Cloud computing kind of removes the need of any kind of doing any kind of infrastructure or setup or software patching, or kind of basically any time consuming IT management chores. So this actually lets your kind of solution focus more on being more productive and actually focusing on achieving your business goals. Last but not least is the reliability. So it is in a reliable environment. That means, you obviously have data backup, you have business continuity, which makes it easier and less expensive, and you also have disaster recovery. So it is very reliable, because the data can be mirrored at multiple redundant sites on the cloud's providers network. So these are kind of the most common benefits of why organizations have been using cloud computing, because all of these amazing kind of qualities that you see on screen here. And for cloud computing, it's actually typically cheaper to use since it is, as we mentioned, a pay as we go pricing model. So as we mentioned, you typically pay for only the cloud services that you use. So whether it is kind of storage, if you're looking for a storage service or a networking service, or maybe let's say a server service, based on the service that you use, this is what you actually pay for. So this actually helps with lowering, obviously, the cost of operation, running the infrastructure and the performance more efficiently, and scaling the business as the changes on demand happen as well. Now, when it comes to cloud computing, there are actually some different deployment models and types of models to do with where the cloud service are and who manages them is very important for us to understand. So let's look at the different deployment models that we have and why it's important to differentiate between each one of them that we have. Now, before we do that, it's very important to know that not all obviously clouds are the actual same. So there's not only one cloud for every single system, and there's no one type of cloud computing which is actually works for every single person or every single organization. There are several different models, there are several different services and different types that have evolved to help offer the exact solution based on what your business needs are. So the first thing you need to do before you actually deploy your model is you need to determine the type of cloud deployment or cloud computing architecture that your cloud services will be implemented on. Now, there are three different ways to actually deploy your cloud services. So we have the most common is the public cloud, and then we have a private cloud, and then we have a hybrid cloud. Let's actually look and dig deeper into these three different cloud models. When it comes to the cloud models, as I mentioned, we have private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, and I added one more, which is not really common, but it's actually a term that's used, which is the multi-cloud. Let's discover each one separately. So when it comes to the public cloud, it's basically a server, a data center, or distributed network wholly dedicated to an organization. And what that means is with the private cloud, it actually the resources are actually used exclusively by only one business or organization. So you don't have multiple organizations who actually use this private cloud. It's actually a private cloud used for a specific, let's say, entity or organization, or like a financial institution, for example, and it's only used for them internally. So it's only dedicated to one organization and it's not made actually to the public. So this is what an actual private cloud is. So it's only maintained in a private network. Now, when it comes to, let's move on to kind of the public cloud. With the public cloud, it's basically just like its name. It's a cloud where the resources are actually available basically to the public to use. So public clouds are actually shared by multiple organizations. And the best example I can give you for this one is Amazon Web Services, AWS. The services are available to basically the public, not only for Amazon themselves. And you have also Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure is available for everyone to use. So this is what the public cloud is actually all about. Then you have the hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is actually a mix of both private clouds and public clouds. So organizations or businesses may actually use their private cloud for some services, and actually a part of that they can use also public cloud for other services, or they may use kind of the public as a backup for their private cloud. It really depends. So it's really a mixture of both private clouds and public clouds, which allows for basically flexibility. Then we have the last one, which is not too popular, which is the multi-cloud. So basically, it's the same as the public cloud, but it's basically involves using multiple public clouds. So this is also means obviously they're all shared by multiple organizations as well. So these are the various types of deployment models or types of clouds that we have, and each of which of them are different from each other. It's very important to kind of remember these in the back of your head as you go and as you kind of learn all about cloud compute and Azure, because you need to kind of understand where exactly which kind of cloud you have to use or deployment model you have to use. So if you understand this, you're good to go. And here we have a kind of summary, a table, which kind of highlights a few key comparative aspects between the cloud models. So let's take one of them, for example. So in the public cloud, obviously, as we mentioned, organizations or businesses only pay for what they actually use. When it comes to the private cloud, the hardware must actually be purchased for startup and for maintenance internally for that organization. And when it comes to hybrid clouds, obviously, since it's a mix of both, this is where organizations actually look more into kind of a mix of both, and they can control compliance, legal requirements, and such from both clouds as well. So this is just a table that really highlights the difference between each of those clouds just for you to understand. Let's now move on to the main types of cloud computing services. So, when it comes to cloud computing, there are three different services that we always hear about in the cloud computing world, for example. And these are very important to also know and be able to differentiate between the different forms of each one of them. Because once you actually go into deploying your model and your business solution, you need to know when to use each one of them. Let's actually explore more what the main types of cloud computing services are. So, they basically fall into three different categories, and they are called they usually call them the cloud computing stack because they kind of each one of them build on top of one another based on your business goals and what really it is you are trying to solve. So with the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, these are the three kind of services that you have on as part of the cloud computing services. Now, when it comes to infrastructure as a service, this is actually the most basic and the most common one. And with infrastructure as a service, it basically provides access to resources such as, for example, storage, virtual machines, let's say networks as well, to basically help you, it just kind of provides access to those systems on a pay-as-you-go basis. So this is when it comes to the infrastructure as a service. Moving on to the platform as a service, PaaS. This is basically it provides kind of execution to the environment, such as application development, deployment tools, and so much more. And the best example for this one, and it's basically all about kind of managing your platform or your software applications. So the best example for the platform as a service is, for example, the Google App Engine. The Google App Engine is a platform as a service since it's an on-demand environment which helps develop, test, deliver, and manage the software applications. So with the platform as a service, you don't really have to worry about all the kind of the IT and the infrastructure or everything really that has to go behind the scenes when it comes to development. And the last one is the software as a service. And the software as a service basically provides softwares to end users. So the one you choose really depends on the needs of your business. And basically, with this one, users actually connect to the application over the internet, usually with a web browser on any device they have, such as a PC, a computer, a mobile, or a tablet or iPad, for example. Really. So, with the software as a service, there are many examples that we know. For example, Gmail, obviously, is a very common one. You can connect to the Gmail from any device, from anywhere you are in the world. Slack as well. We are all familiar with Slack or Microsoft Office 365 as well. So these are the three different cloud services. Let's look at them onto kind of a more let's look at how they are kind of in a figure, for example. So here we can see you have your physical data center. And from your physical data center with the infrastructure as a service, obviously it provides, as we said, access to kind of servers, networking, and storage services. With the platform, it kind of focuses more on operating systems and database management and development tools without really actually focusing or caring really about what really happens behind the scene from building and maintaining the infrastructure. So basically, developing and running your own apps without looking at the infrastructure or everything that really goes on behind the scenes with the platforms. And the last one is the software as a service. And this is the software licensing model, which allows access to software on subscription basis using kind of servers without having to download and install them locally using cloud hosted applications. So these are basically the concept that you will always hear once you learn or hear all about cloud computing and Microsoft Azure and such. So you kind of have to know the difference between each one of them. And I'm going to actually go through the example here once again, just so we can kind of understand them more and remember them, because sometimes it could be very easily mixed up. So we want to make sure we always know these in the back of our head. So with the platform as a service, the example as I already gave is the Google App Engine or even the Adobe Commerce. And then for the software as a service, you have Microsoft Office 365 is a common one, Gmail and Slack. And the infrastructure as a service uses, obviously, it's where the public can use the services. So basically, Amazon Web Services, AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Compute Engine. So I hope this is clear and made it clear for those who are not really familiar with the concepts before. Let's actually move now to the actual main part of what Microsoft Azure is. So, if you've not heard before, Microsoft Azure is actually one of the most widely used cloud computing platforms in the industry or driving in today's world. So, it has a number of variety of kind of products and services that you can use to deploy and run basically your model and to help you kind of solve whatever really your business need or your business goal is. With the vast amount of products and services we have on Microsoft Azure, you would be surprised with the kind of different services that you have that could really help with solving your business need. We will explore that more, but let's look more into what Microsoft Azure is and why it is very important. So Microsoft Azure is, in very simple terms, it's basically a cloud computing platform with an expanding, obviously vast amount of services that helps you build your solutions to meet the business goals and requirements. So we have simple web services. Even have hosting your business present in the cloud. You have running virtual machines and fully virtualized computers for you, and you even have kind of storage, networking, cognitive services, and so much more. This is where Azure services actually range from. It provides a wealth of cloud-based services, like obviously, as I mentioned, hosting, storage, centralized account management, and so much more, which would really help with your business requirements or needs. And it also offers new capabilities like the new technologies that we have, like AI, and even the Internet of Things. So what can you actually do with Azure? So the thing with Azure is since this cloud platform offers more than 200 services, it really enables you to do literally everything that's on your mind, from basically running your existing applications on virtual computers to even exploring new software paradigms such as intelligent bots and even mixed reality and AI. It really depends on what your goal is, but since you have more than 200 services, most likely you will find what you're looking for there. And Azure can easily do that for you in a very quickly way as well. So, for example, Azure provides AI and machine learning services. So, you have the Azure AI kind of service on the platform, and it can help really naturally communicate with your users through basically speech, hearing, and vision. So, this is part of the cognitive services, or like speech recognition, hearing, vision, and speech, also like natural language processing. So these are all available services that really help you to actually, translate this data that you want, and to kind of it helps to communicate with your users through these services. So Azure services actually, are very important, and this is where you actually see them come to life. Now, why should I use Azure? Maybe you can ask that, okay, there are many platforms out there that you can use, but for me, I think Azure is actually one of the most, as I mentioned, it's one of the most widely used platforms, that has built-in products and services out there to solve really whatever it is you are trying to solve. It has preferred tools and frameworks in Azure. You can build, you can manage, you can run, you can deploy and develop your applications across several multiple clouds, at the edge, or even on premises. So why can you use Azure? There are three reasons you should actually use Azure. So if you're looking for kind of a reliable, a consistent, and a fast operating and easily operable platform, Azure is your go-to. Since it also kind of provides a wide range of kind of virtual private networks, content delivery networks, connections. Such as hybrid connections and such, to help you really improve your experience with performance and usability of what you're trying to do. And as I mentioned before, it has more than 200 products and cloud services. So that alone really will help you bring your new solutions to life, to solve the challenges that you're facing, and to help you even make better decisions in the future as well. Also, some other kind of reasons of why you should use Azure is because of the following. So I highlighted some of the kind of most important things that you can actually do, or do actually with Azure. So one of the first ones is to develop your application. You can basically create any web application that you can think of in Azure very easily. After you've developed your application successfully, you can actually test it to see how it's working. And then once you actually test your that application and see how it's working, Azure can actually help you host that application. Then you can actually start by creating virtual machines or computers in any configuration you want with also using Azure very easily. You can also kind of integrate and sync devices and directories virtually. And you can also kind of collect and store any metrics you have, which really kind of helps you find out what really works and what doesn't with the metrics that you have. And you can also use virtual hard drives, which are extensions of virtual machines or VMs, and those provide a huge amount of data storage, which are very important, obviously, when it comes to businesses and organizations. So these are just some of the many reasons it's very important for you to kind of use Azure. If you're thinking of doing any of the following, like creating a web application and you don't know where to start, this is your go-to. And for a fun fact, let's actually just look here. Azure was actually launched in February 1, 2010. So as I mentioned, since it was actually launched, it has seen huge success with all the services that that's been on there. And obviously, as it grows with the new technologies that we have, like AI and data science and Internet of Things, obviously the new services and new products have been added that help us kind of meet with our business needs and requirements. And for a fun fact, if you did not know yet, you can actually use Azure for free to start. And since it follows a pay-per-use model, this means obviously you can only pay for the services that you actually use or opt for. As I mentioned before, 80% of the Fortune 500 companies actually use Azure for their cloud computing needs, whether it's networking, storage, servers, virtual machines, and so much more. And the good thing with Azure as well is it supports really multiple programming language such as C++, Node.js, and Java. And it has a huge number of data centers around the world. Currently, there are like around 42 Azure data centers spread around the globe, and this number is actually expected to grow until kind of maybe even 54, which is kind of the highest number of data centers for any cloud platform that we have today. So if you don't know whether you should start using Azure, this is your sign to actually start using Azure. Let's look actually at the Azure portal. So once you actually look at the Azure portal, you can actually see all the different services, the resources that you have to actually start by running and deploying your models and your solutions and bringing them to life, basically, depending on your business need. So the Microsoft Azure portal is a kind of a web-based unified console that really provides an alternative to command line tools. So with the Azure portal, you are basically able to do a couple of things. So you can create custom dashboards for organized view of resources. You can configure accessibility options for basically having experiences that are basically optimal for your users. And you are able to basically run, build, manage, and monitor everything you have from simple web applications to even more complex cloud deployments and AI and deep learning and so much more. So this is basically just how the Microsoft Azure portal really looks like here. If you go into the Microsoft Azure portal, this is actually how it really looks like. You have the different Azure services from virtual machines, storage accounts, SQL databases, resource groups, and so much more. So you can have a look and see it. And we also have accounts also that you can use free accounts if you're a student, or if you are not a student, you can also use these accounts to actually browse it kind of at your own pace as well. So you can check out the Microsoft Azure portal to actually see how it all works and kind of have an overview of all the different services that you have. Let's see a tour of the different Azure services. So as I mentioned, we have more than 200 services or products really on Microsoft Azure. So really it depends on what your goal is, but they're kind of maybe let's say separated into like 18 categories. So some of these categories include computing services. So under the computing services, you have containers, you have VM skill sets, Azure batches, and so much more. We have, for example, analytics and Internet of Things. Of course, many of us want to use analytics for our data and such. So you have data lake storage where you can store your actual data if you have a huge amount of data. You have the data factory service as well. We have Power BI, be embedded, machine learning as well. Machine learning is highly commonly used as well for all, for your goals as well, depending on your business needs. You also have application platforms, like obviously developing your web application, mobile application, API apps, cloud services, functions as well. You have security and management. So whether you want to kind of check the security center, the Azure Marketplace, automation, multi-factor authentication as well. We have compute services, which are all about virtual machines, containers, and Azure Kubernetes, very highly popular. And we're actually going to cover we're actually going to explore more compute services in the next session next week as well. That's going to be something we will look at. You have obviously the storage platform services, very important. They're part of the infrastructure services as well. So you have blobs, disks, files, and queues. And you have networking services also, like virtual networks, express routes, VPN gateways, and so much more. So you really see where it is going. All these kind of services, from platform services to infrastructure services, are highly commonly you could obviously use depending on your business goal and what you really are trying to do. So we're going to actually look into a kind of more in-depth, let's say, a summary into all of these services in the next session as well. But this is just kind of an overview, just to kind of for you to see how how actually versatile the different services you have on Azure are. So this is the kind of summary of everything you have depending on your goals. So how does Microsoft Azure work? Let's actually, with Microsoft Azure, I'm going to just actually, sorry, look back. So as I mentioned, it's a pay-as-you-go model. So you can start for free, obviously browsing at your own pace and looking looking at your own pace at the different and trying, there's like a kind of, I think, 90-day free trial that you can use. And then after that you can actually start paying as you go, as since it depends on a pay as you go model. So this is how it really works. So you can start by doing that, exploring what what solutions you really want to look at and such. Now this takes me on to the kind of last part of our session today. So this was kind of obviously an introductory session into cloud compute, the cloud, understanding the different forms of cloud computing services, such as infrastructure, platform as a service, and software as a service. We looked at private, public, and hybrid cloud deployment models as well. Now, what is the next step, you might ask me? So if you're just getting started in Azure and you would love to learn more and you would love to kind of go back and refresh your memory, this is your best learning resource. So if you have your phone on you right now, a tablet, an iPad, please scan this QR code or use the link I have on screen for you, aka.ms/Azure Series CSC. What this is actually an Azure Cloud Skills Challenge. And with this Azure Cloud Skills Challenge, I highly kind of, would encourage you to start participating. So what this really is, it's basically a number of learning modules that I have set for you personally, for you to actually start to begin learning your journey into Azure, with different modules that really help you understand all the fundamentals that you really need to know. So it includes lots of things. If you actually just scan the code or copy the link that I have on screen for you onto your browser, this will actually show you the different modules that you have. So you basically will join the active challenge and you will complete your learning modules at your pace, basically get a huge depth of knowledge that you have, and then you will make your mark on the leaderboard. So I can actually see who has completed these learning modules, and this was actually very helpful for you to actually start your learning journey into getting into Azure. And so if you're thinking of getting into this field, you want to kind of explore more, you want to learn more about the specific compute services, you want to explore more about for example, let's say you want to explore more at a specific Azure service, like for example, Azure AI and machine learning, you can find the learning modules for each one of them. It has kind of more in-depth knowledge for you to actually take your first steps and actually start. So it also has some kind of fundamentals, basics of cloud computing concepts. So everything really we have discussed today, you will find it there. So scan it, start learning. I will be tracking, obviously, each one of you's kind of learning journeys as well. This is actually very exciting because it's something that I'm actually also doing and I love to do from time to time. So I would highly encourage you to complete the Azure Cloud Skills Challenge, complete all the learn modules. The challenge will end in almost 1 month. So make sure to start from today, because if you don't start from today, then what's the purpose, really? So that being said, I would highly encourage you as well, as I mentioned, to start taking the Azure Cloud Skill Challenge. It's very beneficial for you to learn at your own pace. And I have already actually seen before we started the session that we had a number of 13 participants already that have already started. So that's absolutely exciting. And I just hope to see more numbers and see more people actually join and take on the challenge just to see, who can make the number one leaderboard. So that's the kind of goal for it, just to help you learn, to encourage you to actually start learning and not just like leave from the session without actually, not having kind of like something to go back to or to refer to. That being said, we are done for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. So the next session, we will kind of be talking about exploring compute services. So we'll talk more about the Azure compute services from Azure Kubernetes and containers and so much more. We're going to explore these in more depth because they're very important, they're very highly commonly used, and it's important to kind of understand the differentiation between each one of them. So it will be a continuation of this fundamentals of Azure series as well. So make sure to stay tuned. The next episode will be on the 16th of March next week, and it will be at 4 p.m. Dubai time. It will be a live stream as well. So make sure to register for that event and stay tuned for that event. It will be live on our Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel as well at 4 p.m. Dubai time. So make sure to continue your learning with me on this Azure series. And once again, don't forget to take the Cloud Skill Challenge. That being said, we are done for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was a very kind of light, heartwarming, kind of very quick introductory session for all those people who don't know really how to get into cloud compute, what cloud compute is all about, because I know it could get a bit confusing, but I wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to understand what Microsoft Azure is all about, the different services it offers, and why cloud compute is important, why businesses are shifting into cloud compute and such. So now that you've had a kind of a basic, a strong fundamental of all the different deployment models and the cloud service types that we have. Now we can actually move on to in-depth and look more into kind of the different compute services that we have next week on March 16th at 4 p.m. Dubai time. Thank you all so much for joining us. That being said, we are done for today. I am actually going to go back now to the chat, see if you have any questions or comments and such. And yes, that's what we will be doing. Thank you all so much for joining. I see we have a lot of people from South Africa, from Bangalore, UAE, Dubai, Indiana, India, UK. This is absolutely amazing. Obviously, I can see a global team from Bangalore, from Cape Town, South Africa. I don't think I have ever had this huge number of different people from different countries join us. So thank you all so much. Yes, someone said, I'm happy to be here. I hope to land a job as an Azure data analyst after this three-part learning series. Thank you, Wilfred, for your comments. This series is definitely one for you. I would highly recommend for you to obviously take the Cloud Skills Challenge, as I mentioned, because if you take the Cloud Skills Challenge, this will actually help you, understand everything, not only in the data analyst, Azure data analyst kind of role, but everything else you really need to know. So taking the Azure Cloud Skills Challenge that I had for you is very critical, and it will help you actually be confident to build your knowledge and to actually get started as well. What else? And for everyone else who is actually joining and saying what they should do or how you can get started. As I mentioned, you can get started by actually looking at the link for you. There is a reason why I set up this Cloud Skill Challenge, because I want you all to benefit from it and start learning at your own pace, whether you are a DevOps engineer, a data analyst, you want to become an Azure specialist, or whatever really it is. This is actually your best guide to actually starting. That being said, thank you all so much. I see that we don't have any other questions. I'm actually going to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for staying all the way to the end. I hope this was an informative session, and I look forward to actually seeing you all in the next session. Thank you all, everyone, and I will see you soon. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.